welcome back to Cinematic Sarcastic, a podcast that talks all things movies and television. I'm Natalie, and I'm your host. On this episode, we're going to talk about a few things. I didn't have enough thoughts around the main topic that we're going to cover, so I thought I would toss in a couple of other things that I saw and was interested in. So over the weekend, I went with a friend to see a movie, and unfortunately, instead of going to see The Woman King, which I hear is doing somewhat well despite the backlash, we decided that instead we were going to go see God's Country. And I was pretty excited about God's Country. For one, I love Thandie Newton. Any of her, like Channing Tatum, Freak Out, whatever, I don't care. I love her. I think she's a very good actress. And from the trailer, I was led to believe that God's Country was going to be, well, I won't even say that I was led to believe. In my mind, from seeing the trailer, I saw it more of like Thandie Newton, Liam Neeson it in a movie, you know, like that something was going to happen to her living alone in the mountains. You know, these guys were going to give her some trouble, and she was basically just going to kick their butts. And I was very much looking forward to sort of seeing her take on more of an action-oriented role, because I think there is some similarities there in Westworld. She's not so much of a badass in Westworld, but I think that the possibility is there for her to be. And I say that having not finished Westworld, like I struggle bus through that television show. I don't know why. I can get into it for a very short amount of time and then it just like wears on me. But I really enjoy Thandie Newton, which is why I like still bother to struggle bus through it, because I just enjoy her so much. God's Country, man, I have never, like I had that Will Smith moment for sure once the movie was over, where I was like, I thought, you know, I saw that going differently in my mind. Like it was a mess. I mean, it was a mess. God's Country was a mess. That is the best possible review that I can give of God's Country, is it was a mess. And it wasn't until we kind of like got back from the movie and we're actually discussing it or talking about it a little bit that we were pulling up information on it, because we just couldn't understand how the trailer seemed pretty cohesive in what it was trying to portray, but the movie itself would be such a jumble. And the writer for God's Country has never done any other films, so he's a first-time writer, and I feel like it shows hard in God's Country. I feel like, you know, God's Country definitely is not one of those movies that you can just walk into and sort of enjoy. It's not going to be like a rock film or something like that where you don't have to think about it. It definitely is more along the lines of having an agenda or wanting to deal with like societal stuff. It's more of real life, real world kind of topics, right? Here is my problem with God's Country in general. I feel like there was that maybe pressure. I don't know if pressure is the right word, but there was obviously some intention, maybe that's a better word, intention to have an agenda, but it's almost like the writer couldn't pick which agenda they wanted to go with, because at least from the trailer, I had assumed that there were going to be these potentially, you know, racist, white, mountain, hick countrymen, whatever, that were giving her a bit of a hard time. I assumed that that was going to be kind of the general social problem that we were going to deal with, right? And I was fine with that. I'm fine with that. And I was fine with her like standing up for herself and kicking some butt, right? And just being like, I am allowed to live here. I thought that was going to be a badass movie. What it actually turned out to be was like, she was a crazy unhinged Karen is the best way that I can like detail that about where it starts off. They do not come to her house and give her a hard time. They do not say anything to her. They do not harass her. They do not in any way, shape, or form mess with her in any way. Their biggest crime and what starts this horror fest of a film, they parked their car in her property. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. They have a red truck and they park it on her driveway, which happens to be in the middle of effing nowhere. So it's not like they trapped her in. It's not like in the city where maybe that's kind of a bigger deal. You know, if they park in front of your driveway, you know, you have to get them. No. They're not blocking her in. They're not doing anything to her. And she unhinged crazy goes, wacko, I need to speak to your manager on them. Like, she starts stalking them. It is this crazy just back and forth between her and these boys that I really feel never, ever, ever would have happened if she had just been like, hey, maybe ask next time, but, you know, it's cool, you know, to do it now, but potentially you just didn't do it the correct way by knocking on my door and just being like, hey, can we park here? Which I feel like would have been fine, right? Any normal human being probably would react that way. And it launches into this mess of her talking about Hurricane Katrina, and I'm not entirely sure what point that had to do. I've read a couple of things about this movie that potentially it's meant to be on just like generational hatred, which would make sense if that was brought up anywhere in any way, shape, or form, other than her telling this one story about how, you know, she was a police officer in New Orleans, that Hurricane Katrina happened. She was forced to kind of leave her mother and go, you know, react to this emergency situation, and then had to come back and find her mother in, you know, the dome and rescue her, which makes total sense to me if after that situation you feel some kind of way. You know, her mother would feel some kind of way, but there was nothing that said that her mother turned evil or turned mean or was like a pariah in the society where they lived. It just said she was unhappy for having to live in Montana now, you know, that she dragged her mother from New Orleans to Montana. There was nothing that said that there was any kind of generation upon generation of hatred and, you know, yada, yada. And then there's some like Harvey Weinstein harassment stuff that happens in this that she loses her mind about. But that whole situation just seemed like wonky in the first place. This woman's like in this dude's house after he supposedly has already gone to bed. And then he gets up and comes into his own study. It's the weirdest. You know, like individually, each of those different issues makes sense as to why you would maybe want to have a discussion on it or why you would maybe want to focus on that in a film. You know, all of them are serious in their own right, but jumbling them together in the way that it was done in this movie made it so that absolutely none of them had ground, you know, like you didn't build up the story around one of them to the point where the audience understood the impact. It was just like crazy woman is crazy. Like that is genuinely all that I really ended up getting out of the movie is like Thandie Newton is a psycho. And not specifically her, but like her character in the film, her name in the film, I can't even remember. But it just was sort of a disappointment because I feel like the movie that I had thought I was walking into would have been significantly better than the one that I ended up watching. And it was so slow on top of it. So it's like you got this jumbled mess of what the story was trying to be, and then it's conveyed in such a way that you kind of just want it to be over with. I know it wasn't a full theater. Like it already opened where I live, at least. It opened to like very few theaters. There were very few showings. But I sort of thought it was like, oh, it's an independent production company, you know, or a smaller production company. It's not a bigger one. So I was sort of expecting that, you know, something that you might go see at like a Landmark theater or something. But that doesn't necessarily take away from its ability to be good. But this was just yikes. I don't even... And I know that there have been like a ton of things going on with it. Potentially, people are coming down as far as the ratings and saying that the only reason why anyone is giving this like bad reviews is, again, for the racist aspect of things. Same with like Rings of Power that's happening. And I have to say, I don't believe that that's true at all. I think that this movie is just... It was very poorly written, and, I came into it wanting to watch it specifically because Thandie Newton was in it, so that, that's not my reasoning for not liking it. Like, I wouldn't give it a bad review because she was in it. That's why I went to the theater to see it in the first place, But I just, I just don't even know what to even say about it. And here I'm like, I don't have that much to say about it. And we're like 12 minutes into the review. It just is such a confusing story, really, in and of itself. It is one that I would wholeheartedly say pass on it. Don't spend your money on it. If you really want to see it, I would wait until you can stream it. I'm sure that'll happen pretty quickly, and then see it then, But yeah, I don't know. The thing that did excite me, though, is despite the fact that Amazon is like wonky and weird about the Rings of Power, they are coming out with a new television show called The Peripheral that I am stoked about. So if anyone hasn't seen that trailer, I would hop on to YouTube and check out the trailer for The Peripheral, because that looks like it's going to be pretty amazing. But so you guys are going to have to let me know either what you thought of The Peripheral, or if you have managed to make it through watching God's Country, what you thought of it. Subscribe if you want to join the Movie Nerd family, and I hope to see you in the next episode.